What's up guys, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be going over how you can make your beats sound more interesting. Now, as producers and beat makers, we do a lot more than what people would think, especially now in the age of the internet where we're kind of these one-man bands, solo entrepreneurs, and among the many skills that we have to learn, I think one of the most underrated, for sure, is arrangement. Now, when I create my beats and effectively the beat making videos that you guys see here, I usually only create the hook part, the main part, and then from there, I dissect and take things away to create other parts of the beat like the intro or the verses. Now, of course, this only happens after the fact, so you guys don't really get to see that process much. Now, last week I made a J. Cole KOD inspired beat, which I'll link up here if you guys want to check it out. But this week I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into my arrangement process and show you guys how I structure my beats with the goal of keeping the listener's attention all throughout and ultimately to hopefully entice an artist to want to purchase it. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, jumping into Studio One, you guys can see that this beat is already arranged, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange it again for you guys so you can see in real time what I did, what I took away, what I added to keep it interesting from beginning to end. Now, in this video, I'm not going to dive too deep into the different song structures for different genres, but for the most part, whenever I'm making hip hop or pop, I usually stick to a 4-bar intro, a 16-bar verse, an 8-bar hook, verse again, hook again, a 4-bar bridge or breakdown, and then 2 more hooks to finish it off. Now, diving back in, you guys can see that that is exactly the song structure that I have laid out right now. But before I dive even deeper, I want to play for you guys the hook part, the part that I made last week, so you guys can get a little bit of a refresher. So here we go. Now what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to arrange this beat again to show you guys real time what I did. So I'm going to open up this scratch pad and I'm going to transfer the entire beat so that way I can redo it without actually losing it. And if you're curious as to what the scratch pad is, that along with the arrangement feature, the arrangement tool that I'm going to be using for this video, I covered in another video called, I think it was like my top 3 Studio One features. I'll link it up top here as well, but that way you can learn about what those are. But essentially I'm going to go ahead and transfer the beat here, so I save it and I'm going to delete it on this section and bring over the hook because that is what we made last week. Now this right here is exactly where we left off last week. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up the arrangement tool. It's this little Tetris button on the top left corner. This gives you the arrangement tab here. Now what you're going to want to do is I'm going to press the command key onto my keyboard and that brings up a little pen. So I'm going to go ahead and just create the hook section by just dragging over. Right click to rename that to hook. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that skeleton for that song structure that I mentioned, the intro, verse, hook, and so on. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's bring this over. And in the beginning, I'm going to go ahead and create that 4-bar intro. Rename that. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this. So 4, 8, and then 16. I'm going to mark that here, delete these first 3. And drag this over. Then we have the hook right after that. Then we're gonna have the verse after that. If you're wondering how I did that, I pressed the FN key and the Option key on my keyboard and then just drag this section over. Then we're gonna have hook again. Then we're gonna have a 4-bar bridge or breakdown. I'm just gonna call it bridge. And then end with 2 hooks. That is a good structure to kind of maintain listeners' attention throughout the entire beat. Now, usually what I like to do is I like to keep an element that is continuous or constant throughout the entire beat to give the listeners a bit of a sense of familiarity. So for me, that would be the keys. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy those over to the intro, the verses, and then what you can also do, instead of just copying this over, you can copy this section. So just do that, and it copies all of the elements underneath. And then let's go ahead and add that to the bridge as well. Oops, there we go. So now we have the keys constant throughout the entire beat. Now the next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy the drums over. So as you guys can see, I keep my beat pretty organized. I keep everything in folders. And the good thing about this is that instead of having to copy all the drums individually, what you could do is just highlight the folder region and copy that, and that brings everything over. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring that over to the beginning of the verse and duplicate that to create the other half, then copy the whole section. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a listen now to see what we have real quick. Okay, now that sounds good. The beat sounds pretty full and I could leave it like that. The problem is that nothing else changes until we get to the hook when that sax comes in. So if you leave it this way, it's just gonna be very monotonous and that can get really boring really quickly. Now what I like to do to kind of fix that is in the beginning of my verses, I like to take away the bass for the first like 4 bars. Now the reason I do this is because the bass to me is one of the more prominent features of the beat. It's something that you don't necessarily pay attention to all the time or hear all the time, but you definitely feel, so you know when it's not there. Now in the beginning of the beat, I just had the keys, which I think I'll just leave like this, but that means that I can get away with having no bass in the first 4 bars of the verse and just have the drums come in, and then on bar 5 of the verse, drop the bass and give the feeling that something new just came in, something happened. So let's take a listen to what that sounds like. And then drums come in. Let that ride for a little bit, and then we have the bass coming in here. 5, 6, 7. So little things like this that you can do to keep the beat interesting all throughout. Now again, this sounds good, but I want to take it a step further. Now we do have 2 sets of close hats and open hats, so I think we can kind of play around with that for a little bit. Now, if you guys remember from my beat making video, I have a chug hat, which I think it was this one. And then I have a more trappy hat. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take out the trappy hat again for the first 4 bars, leave only the chug hat, and then bring the trap hat back in when the bass drops. Let's see how that sounds like. Brings the energy back down a little bit. And then it brings it back up here. And there you go. Now we're not done with the verse yet, because if I leave it, although it sounds good, that means that we technically have 4, 8, 12 bars of the same thing over and over again until we get to the hook. So I think we could probably do something to make it a little bit more interesting. So what I'm gonna do is when we get to the middle of the verse, bar 8 of the verse, I'm gonna take out the kick for about 4 bars. I'm gonna take out the synthetic open hat, and I'm gonna take out, let's see, we took out the trappy hat in the beginning of the verse, so in this section, I'm gonna take out the chug hat and see how that sounds. So I think it was this one here. All right, let's see how that sounds like. And then it comes back in. Okay, I like that, but I think that little section there that we just created could benefit from a little bit of a suspense feeling. So what I'm gonna do, let me find that spot real quick. Right here at the last snare, so it's about right there. I'm gonna take out everything after that, right before it drops again. And I'm gonna leave the bass, in there. So essentially we have this now. Now in this same fashion, I'm gonna go ahead and take this little suspense kind of method and add it to the end of my verses. That way the transition to that is smooth and again, not monotonous. So let me find that place again. It's probably gonna be here at the end of the snare. So let me go ahead and knock everything there back. Yeah, there we go. So it's like 2 layers of suspense here. Take a listen to that again. The hats go out first, here. And then everything else before coming back in. Now I think this verse is almost perfect. I think it could benefit from maybe a variation of the sax in the verse. So I think I'm gonna do that now. Okay, so I brought in the variation of the sax from the hook and placed it right in the middle of the verse, and now I think it is complete. So far, some of the things that we've done is take out parts like the drums, take out some melodic parts like the basses to create these little gaps and moments of suspense, moments of dynamic rises and falls to again keep the beat interesting. And of course, we also added a sax variation right in the middle of the beat. So let's take a listen now and see how that came out. So we got one close hat, no bass. Bass and that close hat's about to come in. Now some of the drums are about to go out and the sax is about to come in to highlight that sax. Bit of a suspense here with drum gaps. And then again, a bit of a suspense to lead back into the hook. And now all I have to do at this point is just take this verse region here on the arrangement feature and then just copy it over, and everything that we did copies over to the second verse. Now last but not least, as far as this bridge or breakdown section goes, what I like to do is keep the continuous element, which in our case was the keys, but then add the lead part of the hook at that moment as well, because that's going to lead back into the hook. So it kind of provides that sense of like, oh, this is familiar. So I'm going to bring in that sax section here, and let me add another crash as a transition, and we'll take a listen to that. And then back into the hook. And that's it, guys. As you can see, there's little things that you can do. You don't have to go crazy, but a lot of times taking things away for me is a good method, a good approach to make sure that my beat is, you know, dynamic and it's interesting. So again, as you guys can see here on the verse, in the first 4 bars, we took out the bass, we took out the trap hat. On bar 5 of the verse, we brought them back in. On the middle of the verse, which is bar 8, we took out the kick, we took out one of the open hats, one of the close hats, we brought in the sax, we created a bit of suspense with drum gaps, and then brought it back in together for the hook. But that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully it was useful to you. If it was, give it a thumbs up, and hopefully now you're more equipped with a little bit more knowledge as to how you can make your beats sound more interesting and take them up a level. But as always, thank you for watching. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you're not already, but I will see you guys on the next one.